So just to give you a heads up on what we're doing today, today is really all about ZRemesher and really digging in deep into ZRemesher and getting ZRemesher to behave in a way that allows us to create meshes that are 99% of the way there for animation. And then we're going to go into Maya, modify that topology so that we get the right topological flow going on our creatures. This week is all about optimization, and so you can't really work optimally unless you know your features well, right? So how many of you guys know ZRemesher inside and out? Like curve remesher or the curve guide brushes. I'm sure plenty of you have gone through that. Maybe I could show you a few tricks with that. Also with mesh replacement. I might have shown you a little bit with that. But I want to kind of give you some ins and outs and little tips and tricks for getting ZRemesher to behave, because a lot of the times ZRemesher will give you what's best sculpturally, but isn't great for animation. Yeah, my dude's in the nude right now. I still have to do quite a bit of work on him, so I'm going to work with what I have here today. But over the weekend, I'll be adding all his other stuff. But we'll be working with this for right now. And let's see, these little shrimp legs, I think I'm going to make those part of the same mesh today. So it's really all about ZRemesher, because ZRemesher is our solution for the long periods of retopology that occur when you're working on really complex objects. I mean, if you're doing a human, like say if you were doing like a marine, right? It might not take that long to retopologize that, right? Including his accessories or her accessories. But when you're doing something that's so not uniform, it's not really clear necessarily what the topology should be. ZRemesher is a good solution to shave that time, because honestly, if we were to take this, like if we were to take my creature even as he is right now without the extra pieces, this could easily be, I don't know, 2 days work, 3 days work. It'd be much better if this was like 6 hours work or 4 hours work, or better yet, even maybe less, 2 hours work. So we'll see how everything goes. Back to ZRemesher. Let's take a look at this. So what we have right now is we have a 26,000 poly. That's odd. Okay. We have a 26,000 poly. Actually, let me just switch over to 200,000 poly. Let's see what our low is. All right, a 12,000 poly mesh. Not necessarily great for animation purposes yet, right? We might have some spiraling. I may have gotten lucky on my first try, but regardless, I want to walk you through steps to kind of make this work better. Like I'm looking over this, and some of it's not too bad. Like I don't see any spirals off the bat. Spirals are what we want to avoid. So spiraling in the geometry, I think I've talked about that with you guys before, but you can check for spiraling. Like let's go into the legs. Holding down Control Shift with the select lasso. Let's see what gets hidden when I do this. All right, so that's a clean edge loop all the way around. Let's check down here. And there's been a lot of work that's been put into ZRemesher since the last version, 4R6. 4R7, they've optimized the algorithm. It's not to say that you won't experience spiraling, and my biggest purpose right now in this session is to show you how to work around that. So I might have to just do some ZRemeshing to get some spiraling, so I can show you how to work around it. So let's join these pieces first. And I'm going to get the shrimp legs in there, as crappy as they are right now. So let's go here, and let's see what I have at my highest. All right, so I don't want to lose any more than that. In fact, let's see if we can't project some of this extra detail that I'm missing in my head onto my mesh. That way we can talk about how to retain our detail as well, right? Because we don't want to lose our detail. So let me go to my source, and I'm going to hide everything except for the head. And I know that, I know everybody's gone through projection before. Everybody at some point in time is projected inside of ZBrush. But projection can be tricky. And sometimes you have to isolate areas, just projecting the head, just projecting individual components to get the best effect. So this is what I had sculpturally on my character. Let's look at my remeshed version here, and this is only 200,000 polys. Let's see if I can get more just into the 200,000 polys. There we go. Please let me know at any point in time if there are further audio issues. All right, so we're going to go to Subtool. We want to make sure only these two subtools are visible. So I'm going to turn this guy off just because I think he might cause problems, and I'll turn the shrimp legs off too. Okay, cool. Thanks, Simon. All right, let's go to Project, Projection Distance, and oh, I hear it cutting left and right, you guys. Sorry. Let's see if there's a way I can make this look better. All right. Now let's go down to project. I'm going to keep my projection distance at default and then click on project all. All right, so I did manage to get quite a bit of detail back into this mesh, but it's not great. I'm missing some stuff here, stuff I might have to resculpt. Let's go ahead and make this a separate poly group, Control W, so we can make an easy selection. I'm going to subdivide this up again. Let's hide everything except for the head, and then do another projection. And this time, I'm going to reduce my projection distance to 0.01, because everything should be fairly close to where it exists on the other mesh. Because I already did a large projection shell of 0.02 or larger, so I can reduce my projection shell after that initial projection. Because what can happen if I don't is I end up with more, I run the likelihood that I'll get more missed projections. So let's try this again, project all. All right, and it looks like I got pretty much everything there that I had, except for little areas here on the tips. I want to make sure there's no folded geometry, right? I'll just resculpt the slug eyes here later on. That shouldn't be too hard. It's not like slug eyes are terribly difficult to sculpt. But I am going to bring those out so that in the Z-remesh, they're represented. All right, so next, let's see, I'm going to weld the claws on. And I'm going to go ahead and weld the shrimp legs on. So let's bring the shrimp legs up. I'll try and make sure this part of the process doesn't take too long. So I'm not going to noodle on this a whole lot. I just want to make sure that we're good. All right, so there we go. Let's go back to, and I'm going to rename this to Z remeshed merge to Z remeshed, just so that I can keep an easier track of this stuff. All right. Now let's check out how many subdivisions we have. So I have 4 subdivisions on here. And if I don't want to lose any detail, I have to make sure, and we covered this last class, that we need to have 4 subdivisions on here. So I'm actually going to subdivide up here twice, 4 times, step back down, go to, let's see, do we Dynamesh, do we zero mesh? Let's go ahead and zero mesh. We want to make sure symmetry's on. And obviously, sculpturally, this stuff still needs a lot more work. I need to put a lot more time into this. But I want to make sure you guys have what you need to move forward. So 53,000, fix its legs. I need 4 subdivisions. All right. Let's freeze subdivision. Let's zero mesh. 21,000, huh? What's that going to give us? Let's see if we can go lower. Losing stuff at the tips here. Let's go half. I want to try and get down to like 10,000. Man, that gave us worse. So the zero mesher, let's go ahead and turn off the adaptive, and that's going to help us with it. Although I'm afraid of losing the tips here, but we'll see what happens. The adaptive algorithm is what's overriding your request to make the poly count a certain number. So let's try just bringing this down to like 2 and see what we get. That's much better. And I still have my fingertips there, so I'm happy. Let's unfreeze our subdivision levels. And so we still have our 4 subdivisions there. Did I lose it here? I most certainly did. So let's do this. Looks like I didn't freeze subdivision here. So zero mesh again. And I want that lower. No, you know what? That should be fine. Let's go ahead and subdivide back up. Now I also want to keep in mind what my highest subdivision is after I subdivide back up, because now if this is less of an issue inside of 4R7 because of the 64-bit option. But if you're still working in 32-bit, which isn't a bad idea because it's less buggy than the 64-bit, but if you are working in the 32-bit, you want to keep a sharp eye on your highest subdivision and do a little bit of addition here. So we have 400,000 polys here. We have 800,000, I'll just say, I'm rounding up, 800,000 polys here. So that's 1.2 million polys added to 772,000 polys, so 800,000 polys. So we're dealing with 2 million polys with everything at its highest subdivision when we merge that together. Now, if you're on 32-bit and you're approaching 7 million, 8 million polys, I don't care what system you have, you really increase the chances of crashing, which is an immediate slowdown. It pulls you to a halt, makes you start over, makes you, lose time, which you do not want to lose. You want everything to go as quickly as possible. That's the more technical hurdles you can overcome, the more that frees you up to be an artist, right? An artist rather than a technician. So let's go ahead and turn these all on. Let's take off solo mode. Looks like I still have this visible. Let's hide that for now. So at the highest subdivision for all of these, I want to make sure I'm at my highest subdivision. Let's merge down. All right, merge down again. Now the only slow portion that we're going to hit here is when we have to dynamesh these together. Let's first make sure that we got our subdivisions intact. Cool, so we have our subdivisions intact on everything. All right, so we haven't lost anything yet. Now let's go down to, well, let's take care of these claws first because those are not connecting with the little stumps we have here. Let's go into move mode, hold down control, tap on the claws. Let's try that again. There we go. And I'm going to do this at the highest subdivision, so it's reflected all the way down into the lower subdivisions. If I don't do this, if I don't do it at the highest subdivision, just to maybe give you a little bit more in-depth knowledge on how subdivisions work. So if I were to do this at the highest or the lowest subdivision, I would have to step back up to my highest subdivision, then go back down to do my welding. And I don't want to do that. All right, because that takes time. Let's clear our mask. Let's go ahead and freeze subdivision. And we're going to weld this stuff together. So I really need to be careful here because I don't want to lose anything. I don't want anything to get welded together that shouldn't be welded together. Most importantly, it's going to be my small items, like these little details here. When I dynamesh that, I'll run the issue of losing that. So I want to dynamesh at a high resolution. Let's try 256 and see where that takes us. 1.3 million. That might be a bit excessive. Let's try 128. All right, so I'm starting to lose the little shrimp fingers here at 128. 330,000 polys is not too bad to run with those. So what can I do? I don't want to drop my resolution any lower, and I don't want to bring it up any higher, like 330. That's going to be a lot of work for ZRemesher. So I am going to scale up my shrimp hands here. Sorry, not solo. There we go. There we go. All right, it looks like we already lost him here. I might just have to pull those back out, but let's go back. And I'll have to do this before I freeze subdivision, actually. So let's step back before freeze subdivision. The reason why I have to do this before I freeze subdivision is because this change that I'm going to make has to be reflected in the highest subdivision so that when it projects after we unfreeze our subdivision, that it doesn't project to the smaller scale that we currently have. Let's turn on local symmetry so these scale in place. And we'll just adjust the size later on. Now, one thing that this will do when we end up zero meshing is this is going to make the hands a little bit more dense, which isn't a bad thing. We kind of want the hands to be a little bit more dense than the rest of the arm. So this little workaround is actually going to prove to help us. Now, Simon, you should be paying close attention here because you have a very similar situation in the belly of your creature. You have those small little hands that sit underneath your creature. I'm going to go ahead and sculpt these out a little bit better so that they work out better in the remesh. Let's check this out over here because I'm seeing a lot of screwed geometry here. Some of that will be fixed. So this happened during the merge process, I'm fairly certain. There we go. We really want to be diligent about keeping an eye out for folded geometry. Folded geometry can really screw you up. All right, that looks good. Let's step back down to our lowest, bring everything else back, and let's see how this is reflected down here. And this is not so good. Don't really have the geometry to play with here, but I'll try and see what I can do. And you know what? Always a good idea before freezing subdivision, zero meshing, and projecting. Especially when you're working in higher poly counts, you always want to save and save often. In fact, I don't think there's ever a time where that's not good advice. So let's try this, all right? Let's freeze subdivision now. Let's go to Dynamesh. Let's Dynamesh this together so everything's welded. I'm losing this right here, so I'm just building that out just a little bit. If that's the only thing I have to resculpt, I'll be very, very happy.